Have speculated about Serpent Mound's origins in Ohio, but nobody has ever remote viewed it on camera. Why was the winding snake-like structure at Serpent Mound created in the first place? Are the rumors correct that giants, aliens, or something else was responsible for making it? In this episode, see for the first time our resident professional remote viewer John Vivanco conducting a remote viewing session on camera to peer into the past. Watch him write down ideograms that symbolize imagery he was seeing, and then hear us compare his data with my investigative research into Serpent Mound. In this episode, you're also going to see footage we filmed ourselves when we went down to Serpent Mound recently to see what all the fuss was about. Perhaps ancient civilizations were more knowledgeable about excavation, the stars, cataclysms, and cyclical events than we think. Join me, investigative researcher Rob Counts, and remote viewer John Vivanco for a metaphysical show that's out of this world. John, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. It's good to be here.
Hey, welcome here.
Yeah.
I think this is the first podcast that we've shot that's been in person.
No, we did it in where I live.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
We did a couple there. That's
Right.
right. You're right.
Yeah.
Well, it's the first time in my studio.
Right.
Yeah. And today we're going to be talking about Serpent Mound and all of the theories about what Serpent Mound is. So one of the things that's going to set this podcast apart from a lot of other channels that are out there is that John and his team have remote viewed the purpose of Serpent Mound, and he is going to be able to tell us from that data exactly what they found and what the purpose of this thing is, and you guys can take it from there. So if you're interested in that information, definitely stick around till the end. The issue with Serpent Mound, I find, is that most people are in an argument about the timing of Serpent Mound, when it was built, and who built it, how far it goes back, but no one's really ever explained its purpose and why they built it in the first place. And I think that that's what's going to set this apart from other podcasts.
Right. I think so. I think the big controversy around this is like what Graham Hancock has brought up. The dates, the time when it was built.
Yeah.
Because of its sophistication. So let's dig into it.
Well, so Serpent Mound, if you guys don't know, this effigy, it's called an effigy. It's the largest ancient effigy in the world. It's in Peebles, Ohio. And there's been several theories about its purpose in ancient cultures. Primarily, this has been associated with the Adena culture and the Fort Ancient culture. The Adena culture goes back a little bit further than the Fort Ancient culture. And now, all of the archaeologists and scientists out there are basing all of this off of archaeological evidence, cultural context, and scholarly interpretations. So we're just dealing with the same old kind of historical archaeological theories that have been swimming around for a while. So I think when Graham Hancock came onto the scene and had a very different story based off of mathematics, where the coils are pointing and how many degrees off it is from where the actual equinox and solstices are now, this has caused basically outrage in the archaeological communities. I'm pretty sure Graham Hancock is even not allowed at the Serpent Mound effigy anymore to do any of his own research, which seems pretty childish to me.
Yeah, I think that's pretty low. I mean, it's a free country, so maybe they should think about that.
Yeah, it's what I find so sort of amusing about archaeology and science is these are claimed to be open areas where people can throw in their theories and the best theory is accepted. But what seems to happen is that once a theory is accepted, it's very, very hard to change these in the textbooks. People fought really hard to get those in there.
Yeah, but it's also part of the cancel culture. Like, it's as though this idea of cancel culture makes it okay to stop somebody from voicing their own opinion.
Yeah.
You know, and this is the scary part of it, the very scary part of it, because this should not be happening at all. Because when you have science, just in general, science is about exploration and putting the pieces together. No matter what ideas or theories are out there, and not just canceling the ones that you just don't agree with or think are right.
Agreed. And sometimes it's really hard to tell what side this is on. Is this just human ego causing this, or are they hiding something? And I think that this is what's caused a lot of people who research things and from an armchair, and or people that have gone out there to question scientific theory, right? And researching from an armchair, that's not a dig. We do a lot of that. You have to do that. Getting out there on the scene and doing the math yourself, which is what Graham Hancock has done, is a step even further than that, where you're really trying to dig into these things, which I totally respect. That doesn't mean Graham Hancock is right, mind you. I don't even care whether Graham Hancock is right or not. I just like the fact that he's challenging accepted theories on Serpent Mound, because it's a whole lot more fun to imagine that Serpent Mound is 12,300 or 12,800 years old than it is to imagine that it's just another one of those ancient sites that's a couple thousand years back.
Right.
And how many of those really are? They don't know. I mean, carbon dating can really only test the surface of an object and the debris or microscopic debris that are there.
Associated with it, yeah.
It can't really tell you the actual timing of those things. And this is what I think has been so hard about the Great Pyramids, is that, you know, if you're trying to carbon date that, I don't necessarily trust that data. It's a good data point, but...
Yeah, but they actually they didn't find any artifacts around that site, though.
They didn't. And also just, I mean, if we're going to get into the Great Pyramids...
I don't think they could carbon date it. I think what they based it off of was more or less the cultures that they assumed to build it, and then through storytelling through these cultures of that site.
And there were no hieroglyphics found in the Great Pyramids. None. There weren't even bodies found in the Great Pyramids. There's only speculation that there was a body or two found in one or another.
Yeah.
And Khufu, who recorded everything that he did and built the greatest of the pyramids, allegedly, he always documented everything that he did. And there's no documentation of him saying that he built the pyramid, just that the other three were built in that general time period.
Right. Well, that's the thing with a lot of those sites out there, is that, for instance, the tombs at Saqqara, the so-called Apis bull tombs are, well, they found bull bones, and, you know, inside of these so-called tombs, and so they just assumed that that's what it was for. But a lot of these things were pre-built and then reused for other purposes. So this is just what happens with cultures. You know, something goes away and then people rebuild on top of it, use it for another purpose. So,
correct. Okay, so one of the things that's interesting about Serpent Mound as well is the astronomical calendar. So the mound's design aligns with celestial events, particularly solar and lunar cycles, and the serpent's head points towards the summer solstice sunset, and its coils align with the equinoxes and solstices. Now, for a civilization that barely has metal, barely has tools outside of bone, and isn't really in the scientists don't think that the Adena culture or the Fort ancient culture wrote. They don't think that they were doing writing. If that's the case, how is the math so exact? This is one of the anomalies about Serpent Mound, I think, that needs to be brought up. When you go to Serpent Mound, and we're showing pictures and stuff right now, I'm sure, how exact these coils are, the curves in the coils, how perfect those are, and the fact that these would be pointing exactly at the solstices and or the equinox or lunar cycles is incredible. That would be very difficult for man today to achieve, never mind an ancient culture that isn't even writing or has tools that are made out of bone. Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually found solstice markers in sites that there were claims that they never knew this information or did this type of stuff. I've found solstice markers, small holes drilled in rocks to put a stick in, and then on the side of the rock are lines. that they would line up the stick with, according to like where the sun was setting. So I've seen this stuff. Other people have seen it, but these are things that are it's like brushed off to the side because they didn't do that. But it's clear that somebody did that at some point in time. Whether that's the native peoples that were here before Europeans came, or someone previous. Someone knew somewhere how to do this exact thing.
Yeah, and it was important enough for them to create this mound. And the way they built the mound was pretty ingenious in that the layers of sediment that they lined up would make it very difficult to erode over a very long period of time.
Because when you look at that site, you go to that site and you think, well, if this site, going up against Graham Hancock, you go to the site, you look at it and you think, well, if this is over 12,000 years old, I can't imagine that those humps would even be there because of the erosion that would occur. And of course, even if it was appropriated later on by another culture, they would have kept building it. They would have kept it up. So,
but kept it up how really is the question. I mean, when you go there, it's grass that's over the mounds, right? They usually keep the mounds very landscaped so that you can see them, so that you can kind of interact with them without stepping on them, of course.
A little bit of interpretive mowing.
We'll get into the whole interpretive mowing thing later, which is something John and I found that was hysterical. Very difficult to keep up, but the fact that it's lasted potentially 12,000 years is insane engineering for a culture, again, that had very little, or that was very primitive, that were just getting out of the hunter-gathering phase.
That's the thing, is that I don't believe that any of them were so-called primitive.
Agreed.
Because they didn't have iPhones. I mean,
right.
Because they didn't create this technology or have it handed to them. I honestly think that's the big issue right there, is the belief that the human race goes from this little thing up to this big thing, from this not smart thing up to this very smart thing, and we are the smartest we've ever been. I have a big problem with that.
I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah.
I don't think this is the smartest we've ever been. I mean, you can look at, when you're talking about average intelligence of men, and you look at what they were doing in the Renaissance period, even.
I mean, even in the 50s,
even
60s.
Look
at textbooks from that time.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I mean, you just read a little bit of what Tesla was up to, and it's blowing anything that we have now out of the water. That's for sure. Oh, and one thing that I wanted to point out, too, that I think is really bizarre, is that when I was researching Mesoamerica and the Olmec heads, I found that there is a certain type of clay that they found up in the Ohio area, maybe even going into the Michigan area, that you can only find in those parts of Central America, in that Guatemala area. I may be off a little bit in that, but if that's the case, if that clay can only be found in Central America and it was found up here, we're not talking about these silos of civilization that just happen to pop up and they're figuring out their own math. This was a cross-continent or just cross-country culture that had a trade route. And they were communicating with one another somehow. I mean, Ohio, it can't be further away from Mesoamerica. We're many hundreds and hundreds, maybe over 1,000 miles away. So that's also fascinating about this, is if that clay was found, we're talking about, we need to rewrite what people think these ancient civilizations were up to in the first place.
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating. I did not know that. So they were literally able to determine that this particular clay came from this site in Mesoamerica. So, I mean, that would just mean the trade routes were huge, a large civilization. And
trade routes were huge, and it goes way beyond that, because they were finding jade in those areas.
Right.
A lot of people have looked into this jade, okay? Now, there's arguments on both sides, right? It is very strange that the objects that they were making looked very similar to the jade objects that they were making at a very specific time in China. And if you look at the sailing route that the Chinese would have taken to get down to that area, the way that the currents go for them would have taken you right down that stretch of California into into that part of Central America. Right. And the Chinese, if they were more advanced and seafaring in an earlier time that we're not aware of, and they were cultivating their jade skills and brought that down there, they would have been looking for jade in the area to make similar objects. The trade would have been even more massive than just going straight up to Ohio. I mean, we're talking now about a global communicating civilization that kind of blows your mind. And there was a very interesting artifact found in Central America. It's a statue that's called the Wrestler. And the Wrestler has very Asian features. Very Asian features. And we're not talking about just, well, it looks similar to Native Americans. It's not just that, because the Olmec heads look almost Polynesian. This was very Chinese looking. So was there more communication in this area than we're aware of? And most of the jade artifacts that they're finding in Central America were, I believe it was a white jade from quarries around there. The green seems to be something that you'd find in China. And white jade exists in that area. They were definitely looking for their own quarries and trying to figure things out. Now, of course, archaeologists think that Serpent Mound were religious or ceremonial sites. I mean, this is what every archaeologist seems to jump to anytime an old building is found.
Okay, so that's what they think. Do we have any theories that come from the deep conspiracy side on what this place is about, as opposed to what Graham Hancock thinks? Or is it just literally the 12,000 year and older mark?
That is the controversy.
That's
the controversy is around timing, mostly. A lot of people are going to have speculations about these things. I think the compelling argument that Graham Hancock has revolves around math. And also, I have to point out that Graham Hancock is a journalist. He's not an archaeologist, which some people may think, well, then why get involved? You don't know anything about this. I actually think that point is really important, because journalists aren't looking to put someone down. They're not looking to keep their own information at the forefront of archaeology today. They're just looking for facts. And in the journalism field, it is very much looked down on to put your own opinions into these things. Whereas what seems to have happened over the years with science is that the moment someone comes on the scene or with a new theory, immediately they're personally attacked. Their person is attacked, which is very, very underhanded and kind of evil if you think about it, because that's what's going on with cancel culture. Cancel culture is you go after the person, and this is why so many people who are famous, who are in the public eye all the time, are getting nailed right now. I mean, there are many issues revolved around this. We don't obviously have time to get into all of it here, but when you gather all of what we're seeing on social media and then the things that are happening in those specific fields, it's sort of the perfect storm to get someone canceled if they say something that someone out there who's powerful doesn't like. So now you've got a mix of ego and what seems like hidden history. Because why hide that from us in the first place? Right. And this is where the sort of conspiracy theorists come in.
Right. Well, you also have maybe the idea that giants built it, or the idea that perhaps it was some type of sign of cataclysm or something like that. Right.
Well, and this is a massive effigy. I mean, we're talking about something around 1,300 feet that this spans. I can't give you the exact figure right now, but it's about 1,300 feet, a little bit more than that. And that's a massive effigy. It's the biggest in the entire world. And now, when it comes to giants, many of the giant bones that were alleged to have been found were found, in fact, in Ohio. There were multiple different articles that were being published across newspapers in Ohio, and even Abraham Lincoln mentioned the giants in one of his speeches. It was common knowledge in the late 1800s that giants were being found in the early 1900s, and then somehow, after the 1930s, all of this got swept under the rug, which is, again, opened the gate for people that demand disclosure on these things to come forward and be like, hey, tell us what's really going on. Stop keeping this stuff from us.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And another idea I think that I have heard is that it's like the Nazca lines, and people think that this could be like that in a sense to
Signal.
be a marker for something coming in from space, right? A UFO or whatever, aliens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, there is a lot of UFO activity over Ohio, even being seen today. A lot of people connect that with the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
Right.
And again, different episode. But people could have been seeing things in the sky throughout history we'd have no way of knowing.
Right.
Of course, now it gets into what we were discussing before, which is the astronomical and earthquake connection. So a less common theory links the mound to the nearby Serpent Mound crypto-explosive structure. This is a geological feature possibly caused by a meteor impact. The serpent shape might reflect a cultural memory of this event or seismic activity with alignments to celestial events reinforcing its significance.
Right, in the sense kind of we've got to map these things out and pay attention to these certain areas of the sky, et cetera, so that we can survive this, right?
Sure, but what's interesting is, let's say there are, now John brought up cataclysms, and cataclysms being, 12,000 years ago, or there was the Younger Dryas, which was about 12,000, 13,000 years ago and thereabouts, right? Now, that was 12,000 years ago. These things seem to go in 12,000 cycles. I mean, why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, and basically around every 12,000 years in the ice cores, Greenland ice cores, have shown that the climate has abruptly changed. I think in Alaska, they've found around every 12,000 years, vegetation, then ice, vegetation, then ice. So there's this cyclical thing that happens here on the planet which brings massive destruction to it. And it seems to come every 12,000 years ago, which follows along with what a lot of cultures have throughout history of the epochs of time. The yugas, in a sense, from the Vedas. And as well as the Greeks with the Golden Age and the Bronze Age and whatnot. These are all 12,000 year cycles. Many cultures have these. So every 12,000 years, we have this thing that happens here on the planet. People theorize that it's us moving through a field of debris or rock debris, or I think a lot of our data points to something called the galactic sheet that comes in these waves from galaxy center, which causes suns in systems to have an outburst. And so when we look at the Younger Dryas, for instance, we see something related to the sun that follows along with the galactic sheet theory and what that does to solar systems, where the sun sort of like goes a bit dormant and it creates a shell around it, and then it bursts out with energy and the shell comes flying off of it. It turns a bit into the whole electrical universe theory, where massive sheets of lightning move, electricity moves through the earth, atmosphere collapses, things completely change. It's like a massive reset. This is what we see ultimately with this stuff, and that particular type event, to me, I got to think about this. It's like, if this site was pre-12,000 years and it was, let's say it was pre-Younger Dryas, and we had that type of event occur that completely shifted everything around on the Earth, I can't even imagine that site surviving.
Right. This is the part that challenges potentially what Graham Hancock is saying right here. Is that if it was a major cataclysm and or a major flood, and there was that much damage, or I guess you could say renewal to the Earth, a lot of these things would be very difficult to survive something like
because
that.
What we see in the data is really extreme. I mean, we're talking really, really, it's not like, it's not 40 days and 40 nights of rain. It's more than that. A lot more than that. So
it's not even a flood. I mean, we're talking about the entire world becoming ice for a period of time, and humans not even being on the surface. It's so volatile. Okay, so one of the things that we did on this episode that's special is before we went out to Serpent Mound, John did a remote viewing session here in the studio that we filmed so that you guys can see how the remote viewing works, and then we can talk about what we found after we went there. Let's show that right now.
708433321. Okay, so we have, I was just feeling this. Okay, there's a lot of vibrating energy, and there's this bumbling energy, and we have the color green and yellow. Ooh. Okay, so I'm getting a physical reaction of like chills up my back. Oh, this is wild. This is actually quite interesting, because usually physical reaction relates to a paraphysical. There's a paraphysical type thing going on here, like a paraphysical energy or a paraphysical type. This is a being, okay? All right, so there's a subject here. Subject that is paraphysical. Subject paraphysical here at this location. Okay, so then we have, I hear a lot of mumbling. There's a lot of mumbling and talking. It's in the distance. It's off to the side. There's a spiky energy, and this sort of like, this incredible like flow of energy that's sort of like moving hard and solid. It's not fast, but it's like a really strong flow of energy, like something you can't stop. Then we have this sort of like, all right, let's see what this talking is about. Okay, so there's subjects sort of grouped and standing off to the side, grouped together and standing off to the side. They're like, it's like they're watching something happen. There's colorful clothing on the subjects too. Colorful clothing, like yellow and blue and red, pink. And there's sort of like, they have like streamers, like shreds of cloth coming off of them. Different colors. And then, so they're watching something. So they're grouped like this. They're grouped like that, and there's something happening that they're all watching. Right there, something happening that they're all watching. And that thing, what are they doing? What is this? So this is a flow. This is a flow of energy. It's very snaky, the way it moves. Snaky energy. But it's so solid as it moves, so solid. And it's as though you can't get it, you can't step in the way of it, you can't stand in front of it, because it feels like it obliterates this energy. So this is like, it's like time dependent. It's time dependent, which is an interesting concept. Okay, so that is like, there's a clock. I could just keep seeing a clock and tick tock. It has to do with time. It's as though like something happens at a certain time. Okay, let me do another ideogram. All right, here we go. 708433321. All right. Word equals map. So I heard that in my head. Okay. Word equals launching. So again, we have like one subject in control. One subject in control, like the boss, or like the director of events. That's a main subject, and there's like directing everything, directing people everywhere. This is very interesting. So because I have a subject, but I also have two subjects here. and we have one subject who feels deceased. We have a deceased subject. There's a heavy paraphysical vibe here as well. So this subject, this main subject is kind of focused on multiple things, which have to do with like some kind of ground movement, like focused on ground movement. But it's energetic. It's energy. But also like kind of like the subject also is like looking up. Like there's this connection between land and sky. Okay, this has to do with events like astronomical, astro events. Because this subject is looking up, sky, like stars, and then subject is directing something on the ground. Oh, it's like there's this massive energy flow, and it has to do with this energy flow that the subject is sort of like a bridge between, like stars, like time, stars, to energy flow on ground, and people. So there's like people, but like the people are stepped back and watching as this subject is it's almost like a ceremonial thing where it's like there's a certain place, certain location. Got to keep writing this. Certain place and location where energy flows. Energy flows. It flows so strong based on like astronomical or stars or alignments, like the subject feels like a master of the heavens, you know, metaphorically like a person who knows star movements, stars and patterns and times to do things. Okay, so this is like a location where there's this heavy energetic movement that happens. It starts and it stops, and the energy is so strong that it has to do with these cycles. It's like cycles of geology, cycles of time and space, where certain conditions arise that are complicated from heavenly constructs like stars in alignment to even geology, where the sun is, how the water's flowing, and when certain things are in sequence, you have this event occur where these people gather, and this subject, this man, says that it's going to happen now. And that's when this energy begins to move. And it begins to move so strong that you can't stop it. And so these subjects, like what are the other subjects doing? Other subjects, let's see, let me just represent that. So the other subjects are like, okay, so they have a feeling of awe. They have a feeling of like they look to this one subject as like the master of all of this. Like the subject would be like a high priest or something, someone who knows when things are going to happen and to set up events around these things. And these subjects, they get the benefit of this. They get the like the feeling of the energy, but the energy almost feels so strong that it can be dangerous. If they stood, it would like be a freight train, just so strong, pushing them out. But it's an energetic thing, so it wouldn't be necessarily physical. It's like a thing where it could tear them up energetically if they weren't careful. That kind of feeling. And so they're in awe. It's almost like a festival atmosphere. It's almost like festive, because this doesn't happen all the time. And these subjects are they're spiritually minded. It's like they would stand off of an edge of where the energy's flowing, so that they can receive some of it as it comes through, because you can feel it when it comes through. And I could feel this energy. It's very powerful. It's very like a higher vibrational type of energy. And this one single man is the man. It doesn't make it happen. He just knows when it's going to happen. Main subject knows when it's going to happen. I think that's it. Let's get in session.
All right, now, John, so let's get into it.
Right.
What was Serpent Mound actually for, and what was your take home from the remote viewing data and then being there and experiencing it?
Right. So it wasn't just me. It was other viewers viewing as well. But, my session more or less spreads out and encompasses what the other viewers were getting, and I'll talk about that as well. So in the data, none of the data was about UFOs, it being a marker. It wasn't, we didn't get any giants. We didn't get anything like that. It's very difficult to get time frames in remote viewing. It's something you don't do too much of, because it can be extremely inaccurate. But what we did get was that this site was largely what they say it is. This is a ceremonial site. It was a very, very important ceremonial site of celebration and sort of showing movement through life, right? Teaching. It was part of the storytelling of the culture to have children learn at this site, for instance, where they understood that their movement through time in this life will ultimately end up in the snake's mouth and death, right? That's part of it. But it is also a place for festivals, for ceremonies, sacred energy. Like there was a sacred energy that moved through this site. Sometimes, in the data it was showing that it could be so powerful. But cycles, it's all about cycles. It was all about teaching cycles and how we go through these cycles, how the earth goes through these cycles, and how to live within that. And then that's the center point of their life, right? To understand those cycles would be the center point of their life, and everything revolves around that. The way when people are bonded together through a type of marriage, whatever they did, children and certain points of their life, becoming a man or becoming a woman, it all took place at this site, as well as just having festivals and dances and just celebrations, just huge celebrations. There was nothing dark about it. It was all very, very happy. It was run by one subject who seemed to have all the knowledge of the stars, of the heavens. This subject in the data was responsible for the alignment of this site. He would have been a high priest type person, or a shaman, or something like that. The scientist, in a sense. And he was the overseer of this and made sure that the specific things that had to happen at this site, ceremonially, celebrations, happened at very specific times. Teaching, everything. So it was a massive, massive tool that they had here. And that carried on for centuries and centuries and centuries, most likely, over a long, long, long period of time, handed down from generation to generation to generation. And one person would be put in that role as the high priest, taught how to do this, taught how to run the site, taught how to teach people through this site, because it was all symbolic and metaphorical for their life and for the cosmos. And that's what this site was about. The type of people that we got, they were small. They were short, dark-skinned, a lot like the Mesoamerican native peoples. They were part likely, because you brought this up before, the whole Mesoamerica thing. They were likely, all mixed from that culture and maybe some other cultures here in the U.S. I don't know. I think now, like the Shawnee, for instance, are much taller than what we saw with the more like the original people who made this site, because we were looking at, the original moment of this, right? It was not aliens, it was not giants, it was smaller statured native peoples, like what you find down south in Mexico, Central America.
Yeah, what I thought was so interesting about your data too is when you and I both when we went there, we started, I guess, throwing out what we were feeling.
Right.
I've been taking some of John's remote viewing courses and just trying to learn from him. I'm by no means an expert whatsoever. I don't even trust most of the things that come out of my mouth, but usually after John does a remote viewing session in his team, I can kind of confirm and or deny the things that were accurate or not in the stuff that I was sensing. And what I noticed was that when you did it first, you got structure. When I first kind of was looking at this, I got subject right away. And one of the other things that I thought was so interesting, because it's kind of both in a way, it is about the structure, but then also that subject that was forming all of it, is the energy part of this entire thing. When John and I went, we both were getting this bizarre feeling that it was, the energy was neutralized. There was kind of nothing going on there. And then, I've been to the site twice. And the first time I went there was my birthday. It was around in October. And when I went there during October, which is much closer to when there are more lunar activity and alignments, there was much more energy in that area. And what you said in your data that was so interesting is that the energy was so strong it almost was serpent-like, the energy itself. Were they showing a serpent for a reason, or was a serpent a representation of the energy, is the question that I have.
That's the thing. That the serpent is the representation of the energy. Yeah. I mean, there are ties into Quetzalcoatl, Viracocha, and all of that as well. And I would not deny that either, because that's a huge cultural artifact, that the serpent just in general.
Yeah.
For these people and the meaning that they have behind it. But one of the big aspects of this was the energy, the way the energy moves. And if you look at the mound and the way it moves, it's just energetic movement. You can perceive the energy that would move through this mound. And of course, when we went, it was dead, felt done, in a sense. And that is likely because this place was and is dependent upon specific celestial alignments. You think about, in all of the podcasts that we've done, and we talk about natural portals, for instance, or sites that have a lot of natural energy to them that ebb and flow. These sites are dependent upon a lot of things in order for that energy to flow harder than it did the day before. Whether that's planets in alignment, the moon in a certain position, the sun having a geomagnetic storm, to what's under it. Water flow is a big thing, and what type of minerals are interacting with that water, and how it's layered even. So I think the site in general is probably layered in such a way, and the amount of groundwater, as to have that basic energy there. But then you've got the other component of the cosmos and those alignments. So it's like any of these sites. This one being very specific, I think that it would be very interesting to truly understand when this site is the most energetic. What are the alignments that cause this site to be the most energetic? Because they're probably naturally, it just still exists. But as far as human and ceremony, it doesn't happen there anymore. And I think that might have been the huge component that, for instance, we don't have anymore, which brings this other aspect of energy to the site, right? So, overall, though, it's a really fascinating site. I can't tell you the time frame of this site, other than perhaps just after this cataclysm. Perhaps, I don't know. Small statured people, go down the rabbit hole with this and listen to some of our other podcasts we've spoken about. Some of the first peoples, when it comes to before the Toltec, down south, I mean, we've gotten some weird data around that, if you remember.
Yes.
You know, Mars and
Yes.
stuff like that. So, and they were reminiscent of that. So who knows? Could be, but I wouldn't like put my hat on that. I wouldn't put my hat on that at all. I would say most likely more modern than 12,000.
After the 12,000
Just my
period.
opinion, yeah.
Yeah.
Just my opinion.
I think one of the other interesting things that I want to point out is we talked about a meteor impact
Right.
in that area that was allegedly 300 million years ago. But the type of there is a sort of three types of rock that are in the area that would allow for the type of energy for this to make sense and for it to have lasted as long as it did. The fact that a culture would have picked up on any of that is mind-blowing to me. It's mind-blowing. It would be mind-blowing at any time I heard that information that anyone picked, whether science did it and or an ancient culture. And it is more amazing to me that an ancient culture would have picked up on this being an ancient site. There's something about this site that makes it more special than other places. Let's put our energetic serpent here.
Right.
That points to all of these alignments and make this the center of our culture, which it seems like it was.
Right. There also, I mean, some of the ancient structures that we see were these kind of, after people came out of this cataclysm, let's just say that they were the ones who were living here before a cataclysm. They knew it was coming. They developed sites like Derinkuyu in Turkey, the underground Etruscan pyramids, stuff like that, where they lived through it and then came back out and then reused the sites that were okay, that were still okay to use, or they would build effigies and whatnot on top of those sites. So it is completely possible that this happened there, right? Completely possible. Because I don't ascribe to science these days and archaeology according to the history, because we've seen something completely different, where people, or the ones that were living here, were just kind of dug into the ground through this cataclysm and then came back up later. Whereas before the cataclysm, there were aspects of more advanced societies, hence the pyramids. And you also have to consider too that before that cataclysm 12,000 years ago, it was known that the oceans were 400 feet lower than they are today. So in that, this is where you see the Yonaguni Monument, for instance, and the stuff in the Bahamas, off the pyramids in the under the water off the Bahamas. So there are a lot of these locations that would have been above. And where do people build civilizations? Next to water.
Next to water.
Right.
Always.
So the big ones would have gotten just destroyed, washed away, buried. So,
yeah. Well, you guys, what do you think about this Serpent Mound episode? What did you think about watching John's remote viewing and then the data that we got around Serpent Mound? Has this changed your perspective of it? You guys got to leave us a comment below and let us know what you think. We're going to do a small after hours on this that's going to be only on the metaphysical.tv. That you can go check out if you want to support our work. We'll show a little bit more of the video that we took of being at the site, and we'll have a little bit of a more direct conversation about all of this, if you will. John, thanks so much for being here in my studio with me. It was so awesome to go out there with you and do all of this. And for those of you at home, I hope you guys thought this episode was out of this world.